It's letting you guys know that I'm going live now. Hello, 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 everyone. I'm also going live on YouTube. So if you guys would like to join me on YouTube, uh, you're more than welcome. I'm going to open the chats also on YouTube. Namaste, namaste. Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm doing a join live with Jeff. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Sudi. How are you?
I am great. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good.
So, what do you think about our topic today? If you were the president, what would you be doing? What would you be adding? What would you be removing? And part two, now that you are president, who do you have to be spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? What makes the great president? So, do you want to dive in? You are the next president,
I know.
Jeff.
I think that's kind of a dangerous topic.
Woo!
It's like a nuclear bomb of the topic right there. That's going to start fights. That's an incredible topic, though.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah, of course. It's my guides, they told me to choose this topic. So let's dive
Oh yeah.
into it and see. Yes. And hi,
Okay.
everyone. Hello, everyone. Hi, Sarah John. Welcome from YouTube. And guys, you probably know Jeff. And Jeff, would you like to give a little introduction about yourself and how amazing you are?
Yes. Let me give an introduction on how amazing I am.
Mm.
That's where my ego is at. So I've actually done a lot of these lives with Sudi in the past on a personal account that I've since made private and launched this coaching account. I haven't been too active on it yet, getting it launched, getting it up and running, but that's why we're connecting here now so that anyone who is interested in more of the coaching, personal development, kind of spiritual aspect of what I bring can just focus on that with this account. I got into personal development at 12 years old, going to seminars. I mean, I was going to seminars and retreats at 12 and 13 years old. So, and I'm in my mid 40s. I'm in my mid 40s now. So I've got 30 years of living this life, walking this walk, and knowing the power that it is that it can give somebody to make positive change in their life, to take positive act in their life, to take responsibility of their life and contribute to others more powerfully. So at this point in the last couple of years, I've finally, what's the phrase I want to say? It's give back. I know that sometimes that phrase might seem a little bit uh, cheesy or kind of kitschy, but in my case, after consuming this information for 30 years, I'm kind of spilling that back. I'm giving that back at this point. So
Beautiful. Okay, Farahnas from YouTube is asking, what is the topic? First of all, welcome, honey, and happy Thursday. There's two parts to the live today. If you were the president, what would you do? And part two is, who do you have to be to qualify you to be the best president spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? So, what would you do, Jeff?
well, there's a lot, right? But I
Mhm.
would say that, it would be probably best to narrow it down to two or three things. And there are two or three things that are top of my mind that I always that I always wish that I saw in a president.
Mhm.
And at this point, I would say probably the most threatening thing to this country is our media. I think it is absolutely the most dangerous thing that has happened. And this country, when we go back to the founding principles of this country, there are some things that are just genius. And when you look around the world at oppressive regimes, you can look at what we have here and go, yeah, man, our founding fathers knew what they were doing, because look at what's happening in these other countries. And top of that list, along with like freedom of speech, top of that list is freedom of the press, freedom of people to report on what's going on, and sensitive, not to go sideways, but sensitive to you. We look at what's happening in Iran, and what's the most valuable thing that we could get? The correct information on what's going on. Without the correct information, we can't make proper informed decisions and choices. And so we need to protect the freedom of the press. Now, that said, when we look at our mainstream media outlets, the Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, those mainstream media outlets are propaganda. They're nothing but propaganda outlets for the different political organizations. And worse than that, and speaking a little sensitively here, because I haven't done my own research, only what I've kind of seen little kind of sound bites of or little clips of, is that in some cases, these organizations are literally being handed headlines and handed what to say back by our defense organizations. Like, that's creepy to me. And so when our infrastructure, when our political infrastructure is dictating what these media outlets say, that's exactly what we would expect when we look abroad at these oppressive regimes. If we look at Iran, if we look at North Korea, if we look at Russia, we go, yeah, there's no freedom of the press there, because whatever the news is saying is what their government is telling them to say. Well, we're not that far from it here. It just might look like a flavor. There might be a flavor of freedom to it, but it's not. And so that, to me, is something that I don't know exactly the mechanism to deal with it. But to me, putting an end to the propaganda that the mainstream media outlets are, and making sure that accurate news and accurate information is getting out to the people, is that, to me, that is the most important thing in this country right now.
Yeah. And I gave this a lot of thoughts about, if I would have become the president, what would I be doing? I think the first thing that I pay attention to is the energetic side of it, yin and yang, and I would look in to see how could I create more balance energetically, bring more balance into the country. Like, when we look at it, I would check and see, like, because we always think that women are always, you and I have a lot of conversations, and women always feel that they're left out, and this is a masculine word and all that. And I would look at this point and see, because as you all know, I have decided to have my niche on empowering, especially women, bringing more clarity and empowering women. So where is it that we see that is not balanced? Do we need more women to be on Congress? Do we need more women to be presidents and judges? And would we as women make better judges, better lawyers, better presidents? So I would concentrate, first of all, on bringing more um, balance into the energy. But here's the deal. If we are going to do that, first of all, we need to have clarity, right? We need to be really clear about how to bring that balance. And a lot of time, I have noticed from women that we send out this hatred energy, and we discussed this, I think it was a couple of days ago, that we think that men are the reason we are not where we need to be. And as long as this is our beliefs, then the energy that we're sending out, it's not empowering, right? So how could we as male and female, come into a peace and stop blaming one another for where we are in our lives or what's happening in our country. And so that would be the first place that I would work on. And I thought about it. I said the next place that I would focus my energy on, it would be school. I would spend a lot of time to work on children and our teenagers. How can we, how could our teaching be to make our kids, every kid, to turn out to be a genius, right? How could we empower kids from the beginning? What should we have in our schooling? Because we know that right now, at whatever age I am, I'm thinking, oh my God, if I knew, for instance, finances since I was a little kid, if I knew spirituality from when I was a little kid. So how could we bring this great balance of everything from first grade, right? Like I said, teaching spirituality from grade one, teaching children about what the economy is and how the future would be. How could we give them more discipline? How could we, if I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, if we wanted to, get medals in every sport, if whether it's basketball, wrestling, um, whatever sport it is, if we wanted to become number one, so how much um, energy, money, investment should we make to give this opportunity to every kid to become really good at sport? And kind of like free, it's not like, I know in some countries there are like, if you want to become a great athlete, or if you want to get a medal or something, they don't have enough access, like free access to great coaches and all that. How could we involve a second language from first grade? Because you and I know a lot of Americans, the only language they know is English. Why don't we have like different languages from first grade? Because that's kind of, I studied, I mean, when I went to school, we had schools that you can have English or French as your second language. So how can we make this accessible to kids from first grade to learn a new language? How about music? How could we have, what do we have to do? What are the curriculums in schooling from first grade that we're creating those kids to become the next geniuses? And how can we teach them to be really creative? How can we enhance their creativity? So I got a long list. If I would become a president, what would I do?
Let me jump in on that before you move on, because that's one of my three things too, is education.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to go too sideways with any sort of conspiracy theories or agendas or things like that. And it is important to see the link in what I said about the media and education. And some people know, but not everyone knows, that the typical education system that we have is meant to funnel people into jobs. It's not meant to groom leadership. Mm-hmm. It's meant to funnel people into the labor force. Now, if you think about that, tied with what I said about the media, they work hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So when you think about education, it's very simple. What's really important to somebody to live a very wealthy life in the broad sense of the word wealthy? Well, learn about how money works so that they can create the most of it in their life that they would like. Learn how love and relationships and sexual attraction works, because everybody, once they get to a certain age, I mean, it's one thing when you're kind of flirting with that as a teenager, but once you get to a certain age, there's a biological drive for most people to find a mate. Mm-hmm. How about how the government works? and how society works. We have like one in our country, I don't know how things are now, but when I was growing up, you have, let's say high school, right? So there's 4 years of high school, and forgive me, I think there's 6 classes a day. I don't remember. There's 6 or 8 classes a day, something like that. And only as a senior, one class on economics, and then and that was for one semester, and then for the other semester, civics. And that's a little bit about money and a little bit about the government. It's like, that's all you get. That's all you get. And we don't get a comprehensive education in what is, look at the government. What is a democracy? What is a republic? Well, we're a democratic republic. Well, that's odd. What's that? Well, it means that we're a republic that's democratically elected. That's how it's supposed to be. Well, what are these other things? What's fascism? What is totalitarianism? What is communism? What is socialism? What does it mean to get locally involved? What does it mean to be a voter? What are these, all of these things on how things work? Nobody gets an education in any of that stuff. Hardly at all. And then, so the education on how things work, whether it's love, the social structures and hierarchy of our society, or money. And then I love what you said, because that's very personal to me, the whole nurturing someone's genius, because I'm passionate now, but I was more passionate about education as a teenager, because I do feel like I'm incredibly intelligent in some ways, and incredibly articulate in my language, and incredibly creative, and a number of things that I have that are very strong in my life, character traits and aptitudes. And there are some that I just struggle with. And the way that the education system is designed, I did not do well. And the only reason that I ended up really sticking it out was because I had one teacher, I'm that story, that I had that teacher that saw the gifts in me and nurtured them. And I ended up, but for me personally, it's like there were classes that I failed in high school. There were advanced placement classes that I got A's in. And advanced placement is the highest level that you can challenge yourself at. So it's like, how could somebody fail one class over here, yet get an A in an advanced placement class over here? So what that tells me, as I lived that experience, is we definitely don't have a system that goes, okay, this is a challenge for you. You either need to ignore it, or we need to find a different way for you to learn it because it's important and you need to know it in the world. Or let's just find what you're uniquely talented at and find a way to nurture that in the world. And as someone, you and I talk about personality tests and things like that all the time. I mean, there are mechanisms out there to test test a person's natural tendencies towards different ways of learning and different skills and things like that. And I think it would be very easy to administer those sorts of things to young people to see where they struggle and where they shine.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's move. I think the second part, guys, is even more interesting. That who do I need to be spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? Do you want to start? Who do you have to be, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. I think that the number one character trait that a strong leader must have is personal resolve. You've got to be resolved. If you're always questioning if what you're doing is right or wrong, you're weak. When we look at strong leaders, it's whether we like them or hate them, there is a firmness to their resolution. This is how I am. This is what I'm going to go for. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm doing. There's a strength and a confidence. Along with that strength and confidence, I believe that we want compassion and open-mindedness. We don't want anybody who is closed off, and let's just limit it to this country.
Mhm.
We don't want a Democrat who's closed-minded to the Republicans. We don't want a Republican who's closed-minded to the Democrats. You wouldn't want a man who's closed-minded to women or a woman who's closed-minded to men. The second that we close off possibility and we look at our group as the right group, the correct group, and the opposing group as the wrong group, the stupid group, the evil group, there's nowhere to go from there. We've shut down possibility and we're not going to move forward. So I think, yes, you've got to be firm in your resolve and your beliefs and your values, and incredibly open-minded and diplomatic to hearing, what other views and opinions. I think those are top two to me.
Mhm. How to be fair, right? How to, because oftentimes what we notice, people are genuinely very nice until they come into power. As soon as they come into power, they have this shift of, their approaches to others. So I think fairness is extremely important, that how solid am I in my personality, right? So when I become the president, I don't just overlook the unfortunate and all of that stuff. Everything doesn't just become politics, and politics, nothing is good or bad. It's just the way that we use it. So how could I be fair enough? Because that's what I was thinking. If I become a president, I would like to bring a balance into the country. Like, if people, because right now we're seeing that some people are extremely poor, homeless, and all that. And we see 1% that are extremely rich. And I think the plan is to kind of remove the middle class, right? So I think in the future is what the 1% are doing, is that to basically remove the middle class and make people dependent on their government or the little money that they get, or so what I would do is that I would create this kind of balance, that everyone is pretty much averaging the same money. So how could that work? We're not going to get into it, but people are basically very much the same, like their range of salaries, and what they're making, and how is their everything is being taxed. And I probably totally will remove tax from people who are not making that much money, and people who are making a lot of money. I don't know, this live is going to be here after this right? Because we know how social media is. Social media, we have a freedom on speech, but not on social media at the moment. So you got to be really careful about what you're saying, because your post or your story or your live could just disappear. Anyway.
Well, let me jump in on that, because you're saying some important things, and I think about this all the time as well, and I think that it's one of the things you will hear a lot of people talking about now, especially in this battle between the right and the left, especially the extreme right and the woke left as we hear it, is the equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. Now, I'm not in favor of equality of outcome. That's a far left agenda. I'm very independent in my politics, but that is a very far left agenda, is equality of outcome. And there's a challenge with that, because what we're saying is that people who don't contribute to society are equal in outcome to people who contribute greatly to society. Now, I do believe in the word fairness, I look at the concept of opportunity. That's the word. How do you enforce, how do you write policy that maintains and perpetuates the most equality of opportunity for all people? And I don't think either party has done a good job of protecting that.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge is, because let's go to, you made a comment about the 1% taking all the money from everyone else. I do believe that there are a couple of people that are really out to take everything. However, I don't think that there's, necessarily people that are meeting in secret to design how they're going to do that. We have a system here that just allows for that to happen. It doesn't prevent it from happening. So if you and I went and opened up a store, everybody would want us to become successful. And then, well, not necessarily everybody, just kind of theoretically, people would say, oh, you two are opening up a brick and mortar store, and I wish you success. And we sell something and we become successful. And then over time, we grow and grow and grow to the point where we're so big that we can start to, exert some sort of influence in markets, and we can mess with our pricing. We can pay people a certain way. We can leverage power to continue to grow and suppress our competition. Now, that's where things start to get messy. And there isn't necessarily a good mechanism to combat this. Because on the left, what the left wants to do is just tax the successful to death, literally play Robin Hood, take their money and give it to everyone else. However, on the right, they just want to let everybody roam free. And I'll give you an analogy real quick that I've thought about, and I think it's a good analogy, and it's the analogy of a zoo with zookeepers. And let's say we as people, there's going to be some really timid people that are just, the little animals that are happy and trying to live their lives. And then there's going to be some big cats. There's going to be the wolves and anything and everything in between. Well, all of those animals in a zoo have different cages. And when I look at the different parties, I look at what the Democrats want everyone to do is have the same size cage. You all get the same size cage. I don't care if you're a little mouse or a giant cat, you get the same size habitat. But then on the Republican side, they're saying, well, we don't believe in cages. Well, if you take away all the cages, what's going to happen? The big cats are going to eat all the other animals. The end, period. That's just how it's going to go. And so when we say let's provide opportunity, it's like, okay, well, how do we really structure the habitat so that the cats that eat more can eat a little more, but they don't get to just eat everybody? And the zookeepers maintain things in a way so that the prey and the smaller, softer animals aren't just all getting eaten, but they also don't have a bunch of wasted space. And I know that seems a little odd, but I think it's a good analogy for how things go. And to me, I think that there's one metric that we might be able to look at, which is the metric of the multiple. When we kind of look at income, we tend to look at this spectrum of how much more, what multiple do the people at the top make versus the people at the bottom. And so rather than establishing, well, everybody just makes kind of in this narrow range of income, it's saying, well, maybe there needs to be some sort of limit on multiple. And that allows the system to grow, but it doesn't just punish people at the top, and it doesn't reward laziness. It just says, hey, look, like you can't make 350 times what the people at the bottom make, or 500 times what the people at the bottom make, something like that. But, I think this is a way to look at it. And I think there's a lot of intelligent people out there that can put their brain power to this task, but that's definitely something I would stand for.
Yeah, but as you're speaking, this is what it comes to my mind, that if we put a system again, not to make it to become super expensive courses or even require to have coaches. If we make it accessible for people to do a lot of personality tests and really get to know themselves and know that what they really like, what are they passionate about, and then they can somehow do that work, I don't think we ever will run in say to lazy people. So as you and I know, people are not lazy, nobody is lazy, but as we see what's going on right now, for instance, if you're an artistic person, right? I'm talking about you. You're a musician, right? So if everything was if it wasn't the money issue or whatever, and the only worry you had is to pursue your career as a musician, and the government, the country were backing you up with that, then you would never become lazy or anything. You would be doing your job. I think the reason um, the people that we see that they don't want to work, or they're not lazy, basically it's what's happening is that some of us, we don't really get to know ourselves, we don't really know what we're good at, we don't know what our talents are. So coming back to what I'm doing, my line of coaching, why did I choose clarity? Because if people are clear about who they are, what do they like, what are their dislikes, what are their talents, if it's clear for them, then they can choose a profession. But when it comes to like art, a lot of people are not able at the moment to pursue that artistic whatever it is that they like. And the reason being is like, okay, if I love painting, there's no guarantee that I can make money off that, right? So that's what I'm saying. I think at the beginning, part one, get to know thyself. Who are you exactly? Once it becomes clear who you really are, what are your likes, what are your dislikes, and then you know what are you good at, what are your talents. Once you discover your talents, then the next step is, how do I get there? Knowing, because we are looking for certainty and guarantee. How do I know now if I pursue what I really truly love and passionate about is going to bring the money? So that's where I think that disconnect happens, that a lot of people are forced to make a living, and to make a living at this moment, or maybe in the next few couple of years, there's no guarantee that I'm going to make money. So I'm going to end up getting a job that I don't like. And then the translation of that would be that you're lazy, right?
Sort of. Yeah. Yes. And I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. I think that there does seem to support the idea that if you're too comfortable, you won't take actions that you need to take. So if somebody was just dumping thousands of dollars a month into my life for free, and the roof over my head was taken care of, let's say someone is the government, right? So I'm just getting all the money I need to take care of the roof over my head, to put the food on my plate, to get me new clothes, to pay for my transportation. It's tough to make the argument that if all of my needs are completely and totally handled, that I'm going to then have all of this drive to do what I want. And here's also the challenge, because when we get provided for too much, who determines what we get? So let's say you want to live in a 1-bedroom apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. You want to live in a house. How big is that house? How many stories does it have? Well, somebody's going to provide for you. And this is what happens in the communist countries, where the government's going to provide for you. they're also going to tell you what you're allowed to have. It's like, sure, we'll pay for the roof over your head, and there's your 1-bedroom apartment in this building of thousands of identical 1-bedroom apartments. And here's your budget for food, and here's the food that we're going to tell you that you can eat with that, because we have smart people that figure these things out. So we have to find this sweet spot of I believe that people need to provide for themselves, but it needs to not be impossible. And I think that when the system becomes too lopsided either way, if the government provides too much, they're going to govern, they're going to tell us what we get, and we may become lazy because it's just the system, we don't feel like we can win. But obviously, we don't feel like we can win if it goes too far the other way, where, like you said this entire time, nothing we do matters. We have to get a job to pay the bills. I can't pursue what I love. It's not going to make any money. And even if I did, it's not going to be enough. And then we feel like we can't win. So the sweet spot seems to be in the middle, which is where this country was. It's not there now. It was there once. And to add something to this, because it's relevant to the conversation, there's a man named Ray Dalio who is a financial genius. He created a hedge fund. I mean, anybody in finance knows who Ray Dalio is. And he put out this video. He wrote a book, and he put out a video that's like an excerpt from the book. And what he said has been supported by other financial experts, which is the system needs to be slightly right of center, financially speaking, meaning we have to have a system where everybody can win and incentivizes entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. We need incentive. So, whether that's a tax break or whatever that incentive is, there is an incentive, because if there's no incentive to strike out on your own and do something, you're not going to strike out and do something. If you're going to get punished for opening a business, you're not going to open a business, because no one wants to get punished. There needs to be an incentive to open the business. What there needs to be is something that's slightly right of center. And I look at it as a another simple analogy is I look at chiefs and Indians. Here we are in America, Native Americans. You have let's say you have a tribe of Indians, you've got the Indians, and then you have the chief that's on top. Well, we need to have a system that gives an incentive to be chief, but we need to realize there's only going to be a handful of chiefs, and then everyone else is going to be the Indians. So we need to make sure that their contribution is rewarded handsomely, and there doesn't get, once again, this gap in income where the chiefs at the top are making bazillions of dollars, and then the Indians on the bottom can't pay rent, can't put a roof over their head, can't put food on their plate. Mm-hmm.
Great. So I want to know, who do I have to be mentally? Where do I have to be mentally? I want you guys to all, hi Mersha John, good to see you here, love. Who do I have to be mentally? Like, how much am I in control of my thoughts? And the second part, how emotional I am. How much of my decision is being based on my emotion? How much my day-to-day emotions is changing and moving? It's just like I was looking at this. Have you seen the chart for consciousness, higher consciousness, that it says love is 500, and then guilt and shame is like 100 or 200. And as I was looking at this chart, I sent it to my channels for everyone to see it. And I was looking at this chart and I said, this is not really based on a solid ground, because you and I know when I wake up in the morning, like today, I woke up and it was like, ooh, something is off. I'm reading the energy, right? something is off and something is, how can I say, I'm expecting for some unexpected events happening. Well, of course, we all know that we just had the moon eclipse, and eclipse is all about, eclipsing what is no longer needed in your life. And it's just like, we are so afraid when we don't know what's ahead and what is coming up and what should we expecting. And God forbid if some secret comes up and I realize suddenly that I have to change, and I hate to change. So change is really difficult. But as I was coming back to what I was saying, when I was looking at this chart, I said, when I wake up in the morning, from morning till bedtime, I go through so many range of feelings, right? So my feelings are not solid. I don't wake up being fearful or thinking something is about to happen. I don't hold that feeling the whole day. Then the next minute, I'm talking to a friend and we're joking and we're laughing and I'm just happy and cheerful. So we're going through all this range of, so how could it be that love is 500? Am I this Zen master that I'm just going to hold this 500 vibration throughout the whole day? Of course not. I'm just going to go through, I can feel the shame, and then I can feel the guilt, and then I can feel empowered, and I can feel good, and I can feel bad. So it's very important for me to know how to change my state, right? So the key point is when I'm feeling down and low and depressed, and I'm realizing this emotion, and I'm feeling this stagnation, do I have tools to change this state and become more energized and powerful and, feeling good? I think the key is into that. So I know my emotions are going to be roller coaster, but how much control do I have on my emotions, that when I'm down, I can pull myself up. When I'm up, I can sustain that and keep that. Is not going to be, of course, 100% of the time, but then again, maybe slowly at these highs and lows can become a little bit less wavy and a less. So it becomes kind of, I can reach that state of flow. So basically, this is about my emotion. This is about, you and I talk about, and we know that, how it is in my physical body. Because I was doing this session yesterday with someone, that she experienced, her boyfriend, who was everything to her. He was her support and everything. And of course, she knew that she was abandoned as a child, and most of us are, right? So the boyfriend was supporting her, he was giving her love and giving her encouragement, and all of a sudden, he broke up. And she was in this devastated state. And as I was going through the session with her, I said, listen, realize that your physical body has experienced a shock. And it's not just how to work on your mind or even the emotion, but let's pay attention to the physical body. How can we also release this trauma and this shock from the physical body? So, what do you think, Jeff? And also, I pinned Nikki's question that we're going to get into it later. Jump in, Jeff.
Yeah, I think that what we need mentally and emotionally, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. I would say that who we are mentally and emotionally makes a bigger impact, let's say, as a leader, right? Where this conversation is, if we're president, it makes a bigger impact on the people. Less of an impact for us. We might be able to be crazy, but very effective.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes a very big difference in how people view us, how we occur to people. And to me, there's no better example than the previous two presidents. Look at Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to say this, whether you love or hate them or voted for them, either one doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Their policies don't matter. Looking at the two of them, we have a word. The word already exists. It's called statesmanship. If we wanted to be gender sensitive, we could say, what, statesperson, right? Like whatever. And that word, when somebody is a statesman, it means that there's a calm resolve. It's like stoicism. They're stoic to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And, people often refer to like Winston Churchill as being a statesman. There's various American presidents, like they were a statesman. Barack Obama was a statesman. No matter what was going on, whether you hated him, thought his policies were terrible, there are a lot of people on the right that were like, I hate his policies, I hate his party, but damn, he's a good speaker. He could stand up there, and he was regal when he would stand and deliver. He was an orator like no other. He could just stand calmly and deliver information to the people. Doesn't mean that he was great.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that he wasn't great. The policy doesn't matter. But his delivery of what was going on was masterful. That's a statesman.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Donald Trump. He's emotional. He uses slang. He's talking smack about people left and right, calling people names. That guy was the worst statesman we've ever had, like back to back. And you might love him. His policies might be great. It doesn't matter. That guy's horrible. Like his Twitter account, he would tweet these, horrible tweets to just get people all worked up. That's the opposite of statesmanlike. So back to back, you have two presidents that, policy aside, party aside, all that stuff aside, Barack Obama was an incredible statesman. Donald Trump was a terrible statesman. Now, think about what I said before, is that doesn't mean that each didn't have highlights or make terrible decisions, and they were good presidents in some ways and terrible presidents in some ways. But it definitely affected the public's perception of our leader.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see, let's say, Barack Obama, we might have a degree of confidence in his ability to represent the country, where, like, when Donald Trump was going over to the United, but again, sometimes it might not matter in their effectiveness, because I watched certain speeches where Donald Trump was speaking at the United Nations, and he's just sitting there on the microphone talking smack to some other countries, and you're like, oh my God, so that's the challenge in all of this, is what you're referring to, in my mind, is a degree of stoicism,
Mm-hmm.
being calm, having resolve, and looking calm and powerful and stoic to your people. If we get too far away from that, people are going to think our leader's crazy. However, sometimes a little bit of that might be helpful when we're going to battle, because what we wouldn't want, we as people want our leader to be strong and have resolve. That's what we said in the beginning. So we don't want somebody who occurs as stoic, but is really soft and able to be walked on.
Mm-hmm.
We want somebody who's firm, but we don't want them to occur as too crazy. So it's like if you combined, let's say, some of Donald Trump's craziness and his confrontational quality with Barack Obama's statesmanship, you think, now that might be a killer president right there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who conducts themselves a little bit more peacefully and stoically, but then confronts other nations and makes sure that, this country, the country that they lead, is going to win and be well represented.
Yeah. So, Jeff, we got 5 minutes to wrap it up. Let's give people some tools before we wrap up this live.
Why
So,
don't we address Nikki's question that you pinned?
okay, you want to address that? Go ahead.
I don't fully understand.
Okay,
how do we move on from a safe place?
Yeah, she is, but she's saying, I got what she's saying. Basically, she's saying, I am in my comfort zone and I don't feel safety. How can I gain safety? And what do I need to move from my comfort zone? So, Nikki John, what I'm just going to start with this, that clarity is power. Please, everybody, write this down. Clarity is power, right? Oftentimes, we can say, we can label ourselves, but I am lazy. I'm not motivated. I'm in my comfort zone. These are all statements that we make. But I think underneath all of this is, I am not clear. I'm not clear about who I am. I'm not clear about what I want to do. I'm not clear what my path is. I'm not clear about my likes and dislikes. And I guarantee you, if you spend some time with yourself and really contemplate on this, who am I really? What do I love? What am I made of? What are my beliefs? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? And you come up to this clarity, all your laziness will go away, all the lack of motivation will go away, all of this safe place that I need, do I feel safe or I'm unsafe? Because clarity is power and there's courage. The courage comes with clarity. Dive in, Jeff, before we say goodbye.
Yeah, I would add that one of the biggest things that you can do to move on from your safe place, to take uncomfortable action, as we often hear, is to break your goal down into as many little steps as is needed. It's a little bit of that, the journey of 1,000 steps begins with step number one, taking that first step. And if you say, I want to climb that mountain, and it's a really high mountain.
Yeah.
Well, that's uncomfortable action. That's very unsafe. And you're like, I don't know, why would I do that? But if you realize, well, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to get dressed. The first, I could get dressed.
Yeah.
Well, the second thing you need to do is get in your vehicle and get to the mountain. Oh, I could do that too. So that's often when we see action ahead of us that's uncomfortable, one of the biggest things is that we're imagining too much too soon. And we visualize us having to take this gigantic leap, or make this huge step, take this huge action. And if we just break that down.
That's a great point that you give us. Absolutely. It's just like when I say, we often imagine the obstacle, as we call it, an obstacle or something is a mountain. And of course, then I'm thinking, I get disappointed. I'm like, there's no way I can move this. But if energetically, coming back to my teaching, if we know that awareness is a tool that can break down or dissolve everything, if you imagine that energetically, you breaking down this mountain into small pieces, this is what Jeff is saying, and then you start make it into little steps. But this, of course, comes after you gain the clarity that what is it, what's the path, and where you're going to. Then you break it down into tiny micro steps. And then this is what Jeff is teaching, and we all know, is to gain momentum, right? Because if I'm sitting, I cannot do anything. It's a state of stagnation. But once you wake up in the morning, take a shower, and then put on your makeup, put on your nice dress. These are little tiny steps. But once you start doing it, you gain momentum. taking a shower, you changing your energy, you exercise for 2 minutes, you breathe deeply for 2 minutes, you meditate for 2 minutes, and then you're going to gain that momentum. Oh my God, I took a shower. What a nice thing to do, right? So I took a shower, I moved my body for 2 minutes, and I meditated for 2 minutes, and you gain momentum. And with that energy, you can go to the next level, next thing to do, next things to do, and so on and so forth.
And real quick to add to that, it can often be far easier said than done to stay out of our heads and stay present. But the tool here is that, or the lesson here is that we often project a failure future from our past rather than seeing things how they are in the present.
Good
And
point.
so we look at, maybe we think that we're going to climb that mountain. Well, we didn't climb it before, and that's going to happen again. And we're projecting this past or some failure from our past into our future, rather than saying, well, wait a minute, where am I right now? Oh, I've got legs. I can walk. I can get in the shower. I can get dressed. I can get myself to the mountain. And if you stay present in the moment, in what's going on, it tends to cloud out or block out the past and the future thoughts, so that you're just kind of right here where you are. So taking each of those steps becomes easier. And it's important because there's actually a chemical, we may have all heard of dopamine, and we've perhaps all heard of it as the reward chemical. And that's actually not true. It's actually a motivation chemical. It often occurs as a reward.
Yeah.
But it's rewarding us to take action. It's a motivation chemical. So when we think of a big goal and we don't take the action, eventually the dopamine stops producing. If we break it down into little tiny bite-sized pieces, as Sudhi said, we get momentum. Well, part of that momentum is because when we actually take a small action and we complete it, no matter how small it is, you take a shower, you make yourself a cup of coffee, you get dressed, you get in your vehicle, you drive to the thing. As you do each little step, there's a tiny little dopamine release. And if you can train yourself to complete the small actions, you're training your brain to release dopamine. And as you train your brain to release dopamine, you will be more often in a state of action taking, which is a physiological state. And then once you condition your body to that physiological state of action taking, then you'll notice that you take more action.
Yes.
And uncomfortable action.
Great. So if you guys are still, because Nikki is saying I have done all of those, Nikki John, maybe you need a coach. So either you contact Jeff or you contact me. Maybe sometimes to get that boost started, to gain more clarity, you need a coach. So either Jeff or me, get a coaching session. Next week, we're going to do another live. I'm just talking for Jeff right now because I'm a control freak, right? Next week, we're going to come up with another live. It's going to be about clarity, about empowering women. Jeff is in our side. Jeff has a lot to share from a guy point of view on how he's standing behind women, helping them out. So don't miss next live, next Thursday. Join live. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you haven't followed Jeff, please do so. And love you guys. See you all next week. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Sudhi. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Love and peace. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.